the MI5 organisation has been criticised for not doing enough to prevent this terrible, terrible tragedy from happening. But also the emergency services at the time, as we heard Richard Tice talking about this morning, were very slow in reacting, also were very slow in doing the right thing, getting to where the damage had been done, because of their sort of rules about engagement and their health and safety operations. I mean, just extraordinary. But what we do know is that MI5 does, in fact, foil an awful lot of these planned attacks, and we believe in that year alone, 2017, they foiled about 30 attacks, 27 of them planned by Islamic extremists. Let's talk to Will Geddes now, who's a security expert, of course, a friend of the show. Will, a very good morning to you.
Morning, Mike.
A terrible story, this, really. Many people will remember it happening. I remember being at TalkSport on the night that it happened, and the thing that I find staggering is not just that MI5 could have prevented it, but that the local, even sort of emergency services just didn't go quickly enough to do what they should have been doing.
Yeah, I mean, it was a catalogue of errors, Mike. There's no escaping that. And in terms of the transparency that I think the Director General of the Security Services has offered, I think is unprecedented, Mike. You know, a lot of this work is going on in the shadows. It's behind the scenes. And that's for very, very, very good reasons. You know, they don't want to give up their tradecraft, what they're currently doing, to open source, to the public domain, because inevitably, you know, we're working against a very insidious enemy in terms of terrorism. We don't want to give them any kind of step up or advantage in being able to foil their detection by the security services or counter-terrorism police.
No, exactly right. But we also know that in the context of what is going on broadly this week, that Suella Braverman, the Home Secretary, actually criticised the way that political correctness has kind of actually encouraged the growth of Islamic terrorism.
Mike, you and I both agree. We've talked about this a lot. I think political correctness and wokeness is going to be the downfall of our society. It's going to be that obstacle that we're going to have to constantly try and overcome, and especially in groups like the security services, the Prevent, program, and even the Metropolitan Police. You know, you look at the aspects of the referrals that are made on a yearly basis. Only 3% of the referrals to Prevent are by people known to the individual, the person of interest. And one's got to question, as they do and have done, certainly in the wake of this Manchester Arena report, that Salman Abedi's family were very much collaborative. They were very much collusive with him. There was allegations of their own particular radicalization, and it's really down to the general public. And this reinforces that point that, sadly, security guys like me, time and time again, Mike, will say the intervention and involvement by the general public is absolutely critical. The security services can only do so much. And what we've seen from certainly some of the findings and some of their reveals of failings, that the mosaic of the joining up of various different pieces by the security services is a highly complex job.
It really is. And, you know, obviously there are still people within MI5 that do their jobs properly and do them well. But you can't help thinking, can you, Will, to go back to those stories that we've been covering about how inside MI5 there was more focus on inclusivity and making sure that people sending emails to each other put their pronouns on at the end, and, you know, asking people if they were feeling comfortable enough in their jobs. And I mean, all of this absolute woke rubbish that prevents people from actually doing what they should be doing.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and they've established, certainly in that recent review of Prevent, that a large proportion of Islamic extremist persons of interest were downscaled as targets because they felt that that could have been potentially deemed as politically incorrect. Equally, the security guard at Manchester Arena, who actually witnessed Salman Abedi in the moments before he detonated his device, didn't want to approach him because he felt that he could have been profiling him unfairly and he would be reprimanded for doing that. We need to have a proper wake-up in this country. We've got to stop tolerating these idiots who are so triggered and unhappy about the ways that we need to be direct. The only way that we can deal with terrorism and with any threat for that matter is through directness, Mike. You know that.
Absolutely right. And there was a lot of mention yesterday, was there not, of the Didsbury Mosque, which should have been under more surveillance, which should have been a massive clue to what Salman Abedi was down to be doing. And yet I'm not even sure that at this point in time, even after this inquiry, that place has been rendered, you know, safe, if you like.
Yeah, I mean, it's like your previous guest, Mike. You know, there are various different areas which haven't integrated themselves into the UK, into the UK community at large. They are microcosms, and some of these microcosms, you know, are reassuring, obviously, for those individuals that have moved into this country, and we want everyone to feel safe. But they also afford that microcosm of individuals that are rattled with hate against the United Kingdom and want to exact their perverse course of justice against us. You know, we've got to break into these communities, and this is something you and I have talked about for many, many years, Mike. You know, it's about those communities also self-policing themselves, and that 3% to prevent is a case in point. They have to start making sure that if they want to be integrating fully culturally with our country and with the United Kingdom, and I don't want to sound too radical here, but everybody's got to work together to keep us all collectively safe.
Right. And also, as Suella Braverman said, you know, let's concentrate on finding the plots where they are. Let's not go looking for them where they aren't, because obviously there has been this kind of sense that many people, Prevent included, have looked at what they call the far right and said, oh, there's a lot of far right extremists, there's a growth in that sector. Well, yeah, maybe, but, you know, it may be growing from 1 to 2 as opposed to from 1,000 to 4,000. You know, the point is this. Of the 30 plots that they foiled, apparently, in 2017, 27 of them, that is by far and away the vast majority, by the way, 90%, I think we would say, were from Islamic groups.
Yeah, exactly. And a lot of those were late-stage plots. I mean, again, this comes down to intelligence and evidence. And for many cases, there are times that have to be rolled on by the security services to allow a plot to develop, to get that sufficient evidence to achieve a successful prosecution and putting that person away behind bars. But there's also issues around the prisons and about visitors going in to meet Islamic extremists and being able to radicalize them from within. You know, there are so many different facets here to, again, without wishing to repeat myself, but that mosaic of intelligence to prevent these plots from happening. But it requires everybody injecting their contribution to that solution. But political correctness, Mike, you know, I know this is a real sore point for you, but that is something we've really got to get over as an obstacle, because Suella Braverman had made that a very clear point. And also this issue of correlation and causation of mental health and mental illness. I haven't seen it in the data, Mike. The vast majority of those involved in terrorism are usually, the one commonality is criminality. It's not mental illness. Most people with mental illness don't want to cause any harm to anybody else. They're more likely to cause harm to themselves.
Yeah, exactly right. And as far as the profile at the moment of the sort of your average common and garden terrorist in this country, is that the same as it always was? Has it changed any since the kind of the breakdown of ISIS in the Middle East and, you know, the people who came back from there?
No, you know, there is still the likelihood of a likely terrorist attack. We are still at substantial in the national threat level, Mike. You know, that threat prevails. The problem is for the security services, because it's a double-edged sword, is that they can't speak too much about what they're doing. And I know people within the security services, both MI5 and also in MI6, in the secret intelligence services. These guys are working incredibly hard around the clock. You know, they get a lot of inquiries, 10,000 or so, as I mentioned, calls a year. Only 20% of those usually come to any value. So they've got to sift through all the lunatics and idiots who are calling up just trying to drop their mate in it or whatever it might be. So there's a massive, massive filtration process they've got to go through. Well, what we're seeing, and this is what's concerning about obviously some of these reveals by the Director General of MI5, is that the tradecraft is changing all the time. These terrorists are not stupid, and they will adapt, and they will learn from TV, they'll learn from press releases, they'll learn from inquiries, they'll learn from anything and everywhere they can to evade detection.
Yeah.